I wanted to start this video out by looking at a couple of definitions. So let's look at settle, to resolve or reach an agreement about, and now let's look at compromise. Compromise is an agreement or a settlement of a dispute that is reached by each side making concessions. So I think what a lot of people get confused about with OnePlus is they say never settle, but they never said never compromise. So for me, I think that's the problem with people's interpretation of OnePlus, especially in the tech community. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to innovation and when it comes to a company, their bottom line is to innovate the best they can while at the same time making as much profit as they can to stay in business, especially against the competition. So them settling would be never progressing, in my opinion. Now, if you're an English major, this video is not for you if you're going to critique my interpretation of the definitions or anything like that. But that's how I wanted to start off this video. Is listen, OnePlus said never settle, not never compromise. So what's happening, everyone? It's Adam and welcome back. Today, obviously, I'm reviewing the OnePlus Nord N200 5G. Now, I have a lot of good things, definitely more good things than bad things to say about this phone. But let's start out with the good, and then I'll go over a couple, maybe two, three things I thought were definitely bad about it that I just couldn't get over. So let's get into the review. I hope it helps, and thank you for watching ahead of time. For starters, let's go over the specs and basics of this phone. So Android 11 Snapdragon 480 has 5G, Adreno GPU 619, 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of storage with expandable memory up to 256. That is definitely right off the bat something I love. Side-mounted fingerprint and face unlock 5000 milliamp battery with 18 watts of fast charging. Now the cameras, 13 megapixel rear camera, macro and monochrome at 2 megapixels. And it does have a 16 megapixel front camera. Video is 1080, 420. It records in HD, let's just say, even on the front camera. So with all that being said, what did I think about the performance? Let's go over that first. So although it has a 90 Hz refresh rate, did I really notice a big difference in the performance? Not really, because I felt like the speed of the processing power in general wasn't really able to keep up as good as I wanted to. It was a little bit laggy, and I could even show you a screenshot of what happened every now and then when I tried to push it. So I'm like, okay, kind of pointless to have 90 Hertz as a refresh rate when I can't even fully use it and really put it to the test. So for me, I don't even think that matters. It's cool, it's there, it works some of the time, but it just kind of was pointless. I would have rather have had an OLED display or something different. But with that being said, I think you're only going to notice issues if you try to push it to the limit of like uploading a YouTube video at 4K or even 1080p. If you're uploading a video probably like past 10 minutes or something, you're going to have to be really patient. So that's the best way I can put it versus when I'm on social media and I'm uploading a photo or namely TikTok, when I tested out uploading things on there, didn't really notice anything super laggy or whatever. Of course, it just performed as expected. Where I think, again, if you're really trying to think that this is a phone you can upload a 4K video on YouTube with, it's just not the phone. So for me, I just didn't really have any issues when it comes to performance. I mean, yes, it got choppy sometimes, but that's after a while of using it. Now next, let's get into phone calls, which is kind of hilarious to bring up, but hey, let's be real, it is a phone. Did I notice any issues when it comes to people hearing me on the other line or when it just comes to 5G? I have T-Mobile, and in the area I live in, we don't have the best 5G out here. So it was kind of hard for me to put that to the test. But whenever I was downtown, I noticed I got just as good as 5G as anything else. But again, that's because I have T-Mobile. It's going to vary depending on the service that you have. So no issues when it comes to cell data, texting, or making phone calls. It performed just as well. I didn't notice anything laggy. I did miss iMessage a ton, but that's because I'm just so used to using that with the Wi-Fi and not being cell data dependent and not getting green bubbles all the time. But hey, other than that, that's a little bit outside of the capability of this phone when it comes to communication. Now let's move quickly into the battery life. So not much to say other than when it comes to it being a 5000 milliamp battery, I haven't had it long enough to notice if there would be any issues over time, obviously. But when it comes to the 18 watt charger, it's good enough. It takes like over an hour to charge from dead to full. So yeah, I think charging it overnight is the best thing to do. But when it comes to all day battery life on screen time, we're talking like 5-6 hours of basic on screen time, even with 90 Hertz refresh rate. I feel like this is like it would take a couple days to kill it. I just never drained it to dead. I guess that's the best way I can put it is I didn't have any special algorithms or data charts to show you. I'm just like, listen, even after a second day of using it without charging it overnight, it still lasted. And I may have the advantage of having a couple of phones I could use at the same time. So even when I left it on overnight, that's the best way I can put the battery life is it will take you a couple days. So if you're charging it overnight, I would consider this phone to be an all-day phone. Now, before I overhype this phone, let's get into a con of this phone. First con I'm going to bring up is the display itself, and not necessarily how it looks. I think it looks great, especially for it being LCD. It's not as clear as OLED, obviously, but I never really saw or felt that it was cheap when looking at it. And that's consuming content, things still play in HD. Yes, you're not going to get 4K and all this craziness, but for me, it's not eye straining. Nothing was blurry on this phone. But I do have an issue when it comes to how slippery the panel is. Whether I put it on my desk or on a notepad, a book, in my pocket, on my lap, whatever I put it on, it just loves to slip and fall off. So plenty of times I had a heart attack where I'd go to the bathroom, put the phone down, face down, just thinking it's not going to be slippery or whatever. And then once I'm in the bathroom, boom, having heart attacks thinking it broke or I cracked the screen. So just FYI, make sure you get a phone case for this because it's the slipperiest phone I ever had. But how it feels in the hand, its favorite thing is how fast the fingerprint scanner is. So if I show you right here, I'll lock it, unlock it, boom. Look how quick that was. I'll do it one more time. Pretty much right on point every single time. When it does come to the face unlock, it was quirky. I just didn't care to use it. So I really don't have much to say about that. I just think it's kind of pointless. Also, when it comes to how it feels in the hand, I like OnePlus's design choice of making it narrow so it's easier to be one-handable, I guess, if that's even a word. Because even though it's a big phone, it's just easy to hold in the hand. I mean, it's grippy. Even though the panel is slippery, it just feels good to even use with one hand, and I don't even have big hands. So I know that sounds funny to say, but it's just the truth. I'm like, hey, this feels cool and easy to use. It doesn't feel awkward. There's no accidental touches. There's a headphone jack. I think it's a definite plus because I'm just not used to using an old pair of headphones. Headphones that I really like and miss, especially my JBLs. So for me, that's a definite plus, not being dependent on Bluetooth all the time. But as far as the sound quality goes of the speaker, now no stereo speakers or anything, and how it sounds, the best way I can put it is it just sounds loud. There's no clarity. It's not rich. It's not deep. There's no oomph to the music or whatever you're listening to. So for me, when I was cooking or doing whatever, when I was listening to it as loud as it can get, it got loud enough to where I didn't have to blast it. Now, I was wondering about how to go about talking about the cameras. First, silence is golden. If you're not watching the video, you may want to watch now because I'm going to show front-facing camera examples first, and then I'll show the rear-facing camera, and then I'll talk about it afterwards. All right, I'm about to go on a hike, so it's really bright, not cloudy. I wanted the sunlight to really come out before testing this selfie cam out for video recording. As you can see, when the light's hitting you, and it's just like all cameras, as soon as you have the sun in the background, way too overexposed. All right, and now here's a video example in that same spot, just so you can kind of see the difference with the same lighting of me walking along this trail. Now maybe I'll show my shoes a little bit just to get as much color as I can because shoelaces are red. All right, so now that you saw some photos, and hopefully it was plenty, what do I think about the camera? It's a huge step up from the first Nord series phones, and in my opinion, I actually am impressed enough to be like, okay, if you are going to buy this phone in its budget range, it's probably, I think it's safe to say, it's the best camera phone for the price in this category, I guess, if that makes any sense. I just didn't really felt like it was cheap, and I noticed the quality was better even after the fact of taking a photo after it's processed a little bit. So I think the pointless thing is those 2 megapixel cameras. That to me is the most irking thing about this phone. Why? Just OnePlus, seriously, why? Because in my experience, when I take photos, I just want something that's quick and easy to use. I mean, I have a mirrorless camera I record these videos with, and I also have a Nikon. And I think that's how most people feel. Most people don't, I rarely see anybody take macros or do anything crazy with their phones. Usually it's showing what they had for dinner, taking a photo of a landscape, selfies, things like that. So I think if they stick to basic consumer usage and not get too deep with it or try to be different, they'll do a lot better next year or the next time they come out with a phone like this. So one more thing I actually will talk about when it comes to performance of this phone is playing Call of Duty. So that's the most intensive game I play, and I don't really game that much, but when using it on this phone, it takes like after about 20 to 30 minutes of playing before you kind of notice a little lagging. I didn't notice much to where I'm like, okay, this phone's a crappy phone to game with, but I just wanted to throw that out there before I forget. Now, overall, my thoughts on the OnePlus Nord N200 5G phone. So for the price, with it having Android 11 and just using Oxygen OS, for me, coming from iOS and iPhones predominantly, like I've used those more than Android by far, I love how there's certain things you can do with an Android phone, even for a cheap phone like this, you just can't do on iOS by default. So multitasking, and namely using YouTube and the picture-in-picture mode for sure without a premium subscription. So if you're in the Android ecosystem and you're wondering if this phone is good for Android, I mean, just in my experience coming from iOS, maybe I can make a separate video on just what I think about Android 11 and Oxygen OS with the OnePlus phone altogether. I'm just pretty dang impressed. I mean, the capability for this phone, plus let's not forget about the expandable storage, but it's just pretty dang good for what you get for the money. That's the best way I can put it. So overall, for $239, would I recommend this phone for its price range, its capabilities, and camera quality, all that? Absolutely. I will say they stepped up a lot, especially since it has 5G and this and that. They stepped up quite a bit to where if you're on a budget and you need a good phone, maybe not a superb phone, I think it's safe to say that this phone is probably the best for its price range and in its category. So for me, the pros absolutely outweigh the cons. Again, when it comes to OnePlus, people just kind of knock the company a lot just because they're going through changes, but they're just not putting into perspective the price range and really focusing on that for how much value you get for the money. So in my opinion, yes, I recommend this phone. It's been pretty fun using it as a daily driver, even though I have way higher end phones like the OnePlus 9, the iPhone 12, etc. So it's dope. It works. It's good. Not much else to say. So thank you for watching this video. Truly appreciate it. Please like if you thought it was valuable. Please subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And stay safe, stay healthy. I'll see you on the next one.